Chapter 11. Peacemaker always wished he had gone to the beach when he was younger, but his mother was always too busy to take him to the shoreline that was south of the rainforest. Kinkajou and Moon always promised that they would take him, but they normally had duties that kept them from doing that. Whenever he wanted to ask Turtle to take him, the Seawing would always be busy. Eventually, Peacemaker reluctantly lost interest in going to the beach. But as he raced across the sand towards the ocean water, Peacemaker felt the excitement fill his heart. For a moment, Peacemaker dug his talons into the sand and skidded to a stop and looked behind him. "Come on!" Peacemaker shouted to two distant dragons behind him, a grin on his face. "Slow down, little one," the oldest and largest of the two dragons laughed. Peacemaker recognized the dragon as his mother, Hope. As she walked, she trailed behind another dragonette, a Nightwing that was black and white. Peacemaker grinned as the dragonette raced after him. It was at this moment Peacemaker realized how small they both were compared to their mother. They looked like year-olds. But Peacemaker did not think twice about it, only waiting for the other dragonette to come closer to him. As she neared, she skidded to a halt, bumping into him. Both Peacemaker and the dragonette erupted into a fit of giggles. Finally, Hope arrived and lowered her wings so she could bring them close to her. Looking at both Peacemaker and the dragonette, she gave both a loving gaze. "Have fun, but don't go too far," Hope said, her tone hardened into a warning at the last part. "Yes, Mama," both Peacemaker and the dragonette said. "Now, go on." Hope grinned at the dragonettes as she said this. Smiling back, Peacemaker felt his excitement erupt like it were a volcano, and he quickly rushed towards the water at great speeds. Not far behind him, the other dragonette followed him, giggling happily. Once the two reached the edge of the water, Peacemaker felt the soggy sand get between his talons. While it was a weird sensation, it was one Peacemaker admitted he liked. Then, when he was close to the water, he leaped into an oncoming wave, which pushed him back to the sand and completely washed over him, leaving him on his back and unable to stand up for a few seconds. The dragonette, who was in the water, giggled happily at Peacemaker's antics. Their time on the beach would feel like hours to Peacemaker. He and the dragonette dug in the sand, tried to catch the waves, while also running away from them as the water pushed back at them, causing both dragonettes to yell happily. After some time in the water, the peculiar dragonette walked towards the edge of the beach where the water could just barely reach the sand, and she began to dig. Peacemaker, still ankles deep in the water, tilted his head curiously and trotted over to the black and white Nightwing. With the sand she had dug into a pile, her blue eyes looked in Darkstalker's direction and then into the distance. Glancing back, Peacemaker saw what she was looking at. In the distance, she was pointing to a structure that sat atop on a cliff, where other Nightwings were flying in or out of. Some kind of palace, perhaps? Peacemaker realized what the dragon wanted to do. A sand castle. Grinning at the dragonette, Peacemaker began to pat the sand that was gathered into a tight base, so that way they could build their castle with a firm foundation. For the next few minutes, the dragonettes were busy building their castle. Only the sound of the ocean waves could be heard around them. Hearing these waves, it made Peacemaker, well, feel at peace, like things were perfect in the world. And then Peacemaker heard it. Angry voices. Looking behind him, Peacemaker saw his mother standing with another dragon, an Icewing. But not just any Icewing. The same Icewing who killed himself in front of Peacemaker in each of his dreams. Yet, despite seeing the Icewing, he felt no pity or sadness for him. Only absolute loathing. Peacemaker resisted an instinctual urge to glare at the dragon as he yelled at his mother, who glared back at him. It seemed like she was attempting to avoid feeling the argument, though that look, Peacemaker recognized, signaled it would not be long until she started yelling back. A sad sigh came from in front of him. Peacemaker looked at the black and white dragonette, whose eyes sadly looked back down at the sandcastle they had been making. She too had seen Hope and the other dragon yelling at one another. It was affecting her mood. No longer was she happy being here on the beach. His heart tightened, causing Peacemaker to feel sorry for the dragonette. Ignoring the yells from his mother and the other dragon, Peacemaker proceeded to scoop up some dirt and packed it tightly to the side of their mountain of sand. The dragonette looked up at Peacemaker and smiled at him as she proceeded to continue building the sandcastle. Peacemaker! Pyria to Peacemaker! When his eyes opened, Peacemaker felt no tears, only happiness, as he awoke with a smile on his lips. "Well, he's awake," announced Jaguar's voice from beside him. Raising his head, Peacemaker realized, to his embarrassment, that he had fallen asleep in the middle of the Quartz Winglet study session, with everyone looking at him. Peacemaker felt warmth in his cheeks as he looked at everyone's amused stares. "The first day of quarter, and he sleeps through most of the study session," Ermine commented, though her voice contained amusement in it. "And for that reason, I say it's a good time to catch up on some sleep," Jaguar replied, nudging Peacemaker in the shoulder. "I mean, 3 Moons knows how long you've had a full night's sleep." Peacemaker couldn't stop the blush, again, coming to his cheeks, though he nodded. "Sorry," Peacemaker said, quickly searching for the scroll he had been on, and wanted to share when everyone else was busy with theirs. "My turn to share?" "Yeah, you were studying Queen Anaconda's lineage," Hyena pointed out, which Peacemaker nodded and pulled his attention to the section of the scroll he wanted to share. Thankfully, the history project for Webbs' class was coming along perfectly. They just needed to follow Queen Anaconda's life now that they had written her social policies for the Rainwing tribe. The section that Peacemaker wanted to share had caught his attention the night before classes would start, and it related to Queen Anaconda's mate, King Adder. Finding the desired section, Peacemaker looked up at his winglet. "First, does anyone know about the shifters?" Peacemaker asked, looking at the rest of his winglet after asking the question. Studying the reactions of his winglet, none of his friends appeared to let on that they knew of what he asked, not even Tempest, the one who had suggested the project in the first place, nor Alligator or Ermine, the best researchers of the Quartz Winglet. When he saw everyone give him an expression, confirming that they wanted him to continue, Peacemaker smiled, looking back down at the scroll. "Well, I was looking through some of the official letters Queen Anaconda sent to some merchants across Pyria, back at the height of the Rainwing's domination of the merchant systems across the various tribes, and she kept mentioning shifters," Peacemaker said as he pulled out a different scroll and opened it to his desired section. "Sometimes these shifters were mentioned as Icewings, Sandwings, and, surprisingly, even Seawings. But Seawings hardly had the best relations with the Rainwings," Tempest pointed out, though she did not sound as though she were doubting Peacemaker, just curious for more information. "And they were," Peacemaker nodded. "But, somehow, King Adder managed to recruit dragons from many of the tribes, serving as his eyes and ears." "So," Cliff said, looking in Ermine's direction, "I guess you could say Adder did have contacts outside of the Rainwing tribe, many who were not even Rainwings themselves." Ermine frowned at Cliff's tone towards her, but she nodded in agreement. "I'm surprised you remembered me saying that," Ermine muttered. "But I admit, the fact Anaconda's mate had gained allies outside of the tribe is rather genius." The Icewing looked in Peacemaker's direction. Does Queen Anaconda imply the methods King Adder used to recruit these shifters? Peacemaker shook his head at that. Unfortunately, all it mentions is how there were many shifters across the different tribes, but she didn't mention anything on how they were recruited. Peacemaker glanced back down at his scroll. But there is this interesting blurb. Make no mistake, while many of our spies doubt Adder's agents, he has assured me that the non-Rainwings are loyal to his cause and would never turn on him in any event. They never did. Jaguar mused aloud after Peacemaker read the message. Queen Anaconda and King Adder were never assassinated, so it looks like Adder knew just how to recruit spies in other tribes and keep their loyalty to him. But how exactly did he gain their trust? Ermine questioned. This was a question even Peacemaker had. To his knowledge, based on the scrolls he read for Webbs' class, the tribes in Darkstalker's era were deeply proud of their heritage, just as much as they were during the Sandwing War of Succession. How would King Adder, a foreign king, be able to recruit so many non-Rainwings into his spy network? Did he just bribe them to keep them in line with fear, masking that fear as loyalty? Or did they truly regard Adder higher than their own queens? So many questions. Even with Queen Glory sending his winglet letters and journals from her ancestor, there were only so many questions that could be answered. It made Peacemaker curious. He wanted to know more. Is this what Ermine and Hyena felt when they studied history? The thrill of the unknown and finding secret pieces of information that no one else in the world knew for centuries? Honestly, Peacemaker would happily have his focus be on history if this were the case. If only he could remember dates and the names of dragons better. The sound of the bronze gong rang in the distance, echoing throughout the academy and into the study cave the Quartz Winglet was in, signaling the start of the next class. Well, Cliff said, standing to his feet and arching his back in a stretch. Time for class. I'm off to Professor Longhorn's class. Anyone else? I'll see you there, Ermine said as she closed her scrolls. I have something to grab in the library. Just make sure you leave my space open this time, Prince Cliff. Cliff rolled his eyes at the Icewing's comment, clearly referencing the last time he and Ermine were in the same class, and he had left her spot in the cave completely cluttered with books and scrolls he had gotten from the library. Yeah, Cliff said as he glanced at Peacemaker. You coming, Peace? Peacemaker shook his head, much to both his and Cliff's disappointment. I have tribal cultures, Peacemaker replied. I'll see you in the library afterward. At this, Cliff grinned. Sounds good. Tempest stood up, gathering her things. I can join you both if you like. I'll be in that class as well. We'll be in that class as well. Hyena butted in, leaning in close to Alligator, who blushed. After all, fitting that we'll be in the first class to listen to Sunny's lectures on scavengers. Huh, Alligator? At this, Alligator smiled softly, not knowing that Winter would be co-teaching the class with Sunny. Hyena had done a very good job at keeping Winter's arrival to the academy a secret, managing to steer away from the Sanctuary Preserve founder's general direction or interrupting conversations that may bring up his name. If Peacemaker was honest, he couldn't wait to see the Mudwing's reaction when he saw Winter, Alligator's hero. As the Quartz Winglet said their temporary farewells and split in their different directions, Peacemaker, Tempest, Hyena, and Alligator walked together down the tunnels of the academy to their desired location. What were you dreaming about? Tempest asked. Her voice wasn't filled with concern, just curiosity. About the beach, Peacemaker replied, smiling as he recalled running towards the waves as the dragonette was with him. It's funny. I've never been to the coastline, but The dream made it seem so real. Fascinating, Tempest said, a smile on her lips confirming she was happy that the dream was happy, rather than a nightmare. Must be weird, never having seen the ocean. Never got how dragons couldn't live near the ocean. Speak for yourself, Hyena butted in. You can breathe underwater. And mudwings can hold their breath for a long time, Tempest commented, gesturing the tip of her tail to Alligator, whose pace slowed. That's true, but please keep me out of this, Alligator said, sighing at being dragged into a debate. A few minutes later, the four entered Sunny's cave and found their spots as the rest of the class convened. As Alligator placed his things into position, he sat down and looked up at Sunny, and saw Winter speaking with the Academy founder. Sunny chuckling at something that Winter had said, which Winter gave a soft chuckle as well. Seeing his hero, albeit with his back turned, Alligator's eyes widened like dinner plates as he glanced at Peacemaker, Tempest, and Hyena, the latter of the three grinning widely at her friend. Alligator slowly grinned happily as he quickly got his parchment out and was ready to take notes. Never had Peacemaker seen Alligator this excited before. He could have sworn the Mudwing was about to bounce off the walls with excitement. When the final sound of the gong rang, signaling the start of the class session, everyone quieted down and got into their seats while Sunny took her place in the center of the cave. Winter waited patiently near the writing board, waiting for Sunny to introduce him. I hope you all had a great break, Sunny said, genuinely happy to see her students. This part of the term, just like the last, will flow fast and we have much to cover, so we can begin. I want to introduce my partner for this lesson on scavengers, the Sanctuary Preserve founder himself, Prince Winter. Gesturing to Winter, the Icewing stepped forward, his the blue hue of his predominantly white scales reflecting the candlelight of the cave as he approached. With a soft smile, Winter nodded his head at the class. His eyes briefly fell on Peacemaker before glancing at Alligator. When Winter saw Alligator, his smile raised ever so slightly and gave one nod to the Mudwing, who looked like he would faint. It is a pleasure to meet you all, Winter said before frowning and glancing back at Sunny. And contrary to my former teacher, it is just Winter, though I appreciate her kindness. His attention turned back to the students. It has been a very long time since I have been in the academy, and I will say it is a pleasure to see how it has grown in the last 6 years. As Winter said this, Peacemaker could have noticed a brief pang of sadness cross his eyes as he spoke, almost as if he was thinking about something. Looking to Tempest, wondering if she had seen it too, he saw the Sea-Wing look at him and give him a small nod. Peacemaker wondered what it was the Icewing was thinking about. How he wished he had Moon's mind-reading powers, or Kibli's ability to understand dragons around him. Through Winter's expressions, Peacemaker continued to wonder why Kibli and Moon never spoke about him, or their original Mudwing clawmate. When Winter started speaking again, this drew Peacemaker from his thoughts. I know many of you may have misconceptions about scavengers, or simply not know much about them. It is the hope of Sunny and I that, through this section of the curriculum, we give you information my team and I at Sanctuary have gathered in the last 6 years. With that, Winter concluded his opening, glancing at Sunny to continue. As Sunny showed on the board the various subsections of the scavenger unit, she explained what would be covered in each. Among these subsections included theories based on the structures that researchers in the Mud and Sand Kingdoms had found. But as Sunny explained this particular subsection, there was a laugh in the cave. Looking in the direction of the silver winglet, Peacemaker saw Gull chuckling to himself, clearly trying to keep himself composed. Everyone knows scavengers aren't smart enough to make that, Goal said, a grin on his face as everyone looked at him. Around the class, Peacemaker saw some students nodding in agreement with him. With a glance to Winter, he saw the Icewing giving the Sea-Wing's rude comment a neutral gaze. Sunny, however, was about to speak. Until Alligator commented. Well, according to popular and wrong theories, Alligator spoke up, blushing as everyone in the class looked at him, even Gull, who glared at him. Lots of the dig sites had metal mechanical objects with long-deceased scavengers inside. These metal objects had so many pieces to them, and some researchers even think they were used by scavengers for transport. No one wants to hear the fantasies of a mudwing pretending to be smart. Gull sneered at Alligator before glaring at Tempest. Especially one who is clawmates with an ungrateful Outer Kingdom peasant. Gull! That is enough! Sunny rose her voice sternly. You should watch your mouth, Gull, Hyena suddenly said after Sunny spoke. Especially with someone like Alligator. Oh yeah? Gull glared at the Sandwing. Yeah, Hyena said as she stood up and shot Gull the harshest glare Peacemaker had ever seen her give anyone. The ancient mudwing tombs that caught everyone's attention a few years ago? The ones that date back thousands of years? Hyena then smirked as she said this. Alligator, only a few years old, was on the dig team. And he was the one who found the top of the tomb and brought every one of the diggers and researchers close to digging in that exact spot. He made that discovery, Hyena said, grinning, as everyone, even Sunny and Winter, stared at Alligator with wide and impressed eyes. Gull slowly sank to his seat, realizing the opinion was turning against him. Hyena continued. During that dig, he also found remains of a scavenger city, an ancient one that looked like it dated back before the scorching. Hyena pointed a talon at Alligator. If anyone knows anything about architecture and scavengers theory, it is Alligator himself, the youngest of his troop who discovered that the most famous researchers praise. Placing a wing over Alligator. So you watch your tongue, Gull, when you talk to Alligator, because unlike you, he is the smartest dragon you will ever know, and the most humble. Peacemaker's eyes fell on Alligator as this was said. He did not know this about his clawmate. While Alligator blushed ever so slightly at Hyena's words, Peacemaker saw the Mudwing give a soft smile to Hyena as the Sandwing twined her tail with his. When Gull said nothing, the Seawing looked like he wanted to just vanish into midair as most of the class stared at him, while many Seawings and those in the Silver Winglet looked embarrassed at Gull's outburst. Clearly, no one supported Gull and saw any reason to debate Hyena. Gull, Sunny said. Her normally calm voice held a hint of anger towards him. After class, I want you to go straight to Tsunami's office. It seems there's going to be a lot we need to talk about. Gull said nothing, as he merely nodded in embarrassment at being humbled by Hyena. When her message had been made clear, Sunny turned to Winter and gave him an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Winter. Would you like to begin? Sunny asked her former student. With a nod to Sunny, Winter approached the board and continued from where he had left off before he and Sunny had been interrupted. The next hour went on without incident. Winter gave an in-depth explanation into current theories on scavengers, while debunking popular and misleading stories about scavengers. When it came time for questions, Alligator was the first, and the most eager of the class to try and ask a question. Winter, however, addressed Alligator directly. I know you must have lots of questions, Alligator, but I would like to take time to address all of them, one-on-one, in a few hours, Winter said. In response, Alligator gave one of the biggest grins Peacemaker had ever seen. Smiling at his friend's excitement, Peacemaker was happy to hear that Alligator would be able to converse with his hero. Eventually, the sound of the gong rang, signaling the end of the class period and the beginning of lunch. As the students filed out of the cave, Winter approached Peacemaker and the rest of the court's winglet. The former prince looked at Alligator with a faint smile. "After the last class session, I will be in the library. There are a few books I would like to collect, and I was wondering if you could help me. During that time, I will be an open book." Winter frowned to himself as he realized the pun he had just made. "I would love to help," Alligator said, smiling brightly to the Sanctuary Preserve founder. With a nod of his head, Winter gave a slight bow of his head to the assembled court's winglet. "A pleasure to meet you again, Peacemaker," Winter said as he and Sunny walked in the opposite direction Peacemaker and the others were headed. "Wade, you met Winter?" Alligator asked, raising a brow at Peacemaker, who smiled sheepishly. "He arrived during our day off," Peacemaker admitted. Alligator glanced at both Peacemaker and Hyena, before he placed his talons overhead. "That's why you kept directing me in other directions, Hyena," Alligator groaned. "Maybe," Hyena said, smirking as she walked by Alligator, brushing her wings against his as she walked by him. Glancing back at Peacemaker, Alligator, and Tempest, Hyena gestured in the direction of the library. "You guys head to the study cave Jaguar wanted us to study in. I'll get us some food." Without any word from Peacemaker and the others, Hyena walked off in her direction, her wings swaying back and forth. The Sandwing was in a very good mood, in no small part because Alligator was happy. Indeed, both Alligator and Hyena were a weird pair, but seeing Hyena step up to defend Alligator made Peacemaker realize that, while she teased Alligator, she was always in his corner. Seeing this made Peacemaker think of Kibble and Moon. When he was younger, Kibble would always tease Moon, but stand up for her when he knew she needed help. "Come on," Tempest said, snapping Peacemaker from his thoughts as she gestured down the direction of where the study cave was. "Hopefully, we can get things ready before the rest of the winglet gets there." Yeah, Alligator said. It looked like he was still trying to shake off all the emotions he was feeling at the moment. Walking through the academy together, Peacemaker had a good feeling about the rest of this term. No nightmares, his friends somewhat getting along, and oof! Tempest tripped forward as she was about to turn a corner. After she fell on the ground, Peacemaker and Alligator rushed forward to help their friend stand up. As they did, Peacemaker heard a snicker from in front of them. Goal looked down at Tempest with a snide smirk as he moved his tail away from where she had tripped. "Goal, what is wrong with you?" Tempest snapped at the Sea-Wing. "I'm not interested in a debate right now. Save it for when I care." "Shut up, Outer Kingdom peasant," Goal sneered, glaring at her. "Don't talk about a true citizen with that tongue. You're not even worth mentioning our queen's name, after the bad things you've said about her." "Save it for another time," Tempest growled as she walked past him. But, as she attempted to walk away, Goal grabbed her forearm with his talons. Tempest gasped as Goal's talons dug into her scales. "Goal!" "Don't walk away when you're being talked to," Goal growled as he edged closer. Seeing this, Peacemaker felt anger stir in his chest, seeing Tempest, his friend, being harassed by Goal. Grinding his teeth together, Peacemaker stepped forward, the star-like design on his wing membranes turning a dark shade of red in anger. "Stop!" A voice spoke into his head. Unwillingly, Peacemaker felt his feet freeze in mid-step. The voice. It was Moon's. Her kind voice rang through his mind, and instinctively, Peacemaker answered it. But the anger would not subside. Gol was still harassing his friend. "Be kind. Do not get angry," Moon's voice whispered. "But his friends will be fine." "Hey! Hey!" Alligator said, quickly stepping forward and grabbing Gol's forearm. "Just calm down." In response to being touched, Gol's glare turned on Alligator. The next thing that happened made Peacemaker's blood boil in a way he never thought it would. Gol spun around and with his tail raised, struck Alligator across his face. The Mudwing yelped as he fell to the floor, his glasses flying off of his face and hitting the ground with a crack. "Shut up, wimp," Gol growled as he let go of Tempest, and walked towards Alligator as the Mudwing tried to stand and reach for his glasses. No, he wasn't going to stand by. Peacemaker! He didn't care. Stepping in between Gol and Alligator, Peacemaker glared at the Sea-Wing. "Stop talking!" Peacemaker snapped at Gol, whose glare turned on him. In any normal situation, Peacemaker would have shrinked under the glare. But not this time. Not when his friends were being harassed. He was not going to back down. "Get out of the way, hybrid," Gol said, shoving Peacemaker out of his way violently, sending Peacemaker hitting the ground. After his side hit the floor, Peacemaker quickly stood back up to his feet and glared at Gol as he stepped in between him and Alligator again. He wanted Gol to shut up. Just do as you're told and shut up, Peacemaker shouted at Gol. Tempest, Alligator, and even Gol looked at Peacemaker in shock at his outburst. To everyone, even Gol's shock, Gol listened to what Peacemaker had shouted. His mouth was closed, and no words came out of it. Satisfied, Peacemaker continued, "Get out of our way. Leave us alone and cool off." If Peacemaker was honest, he'd prefer it if Gol cooled off in the Ice Kingdom, far away from his friend. Instead of arguing or saying any more rude words, Gol simply looked at Peacemaker in shock, looked down at the floor, and slowly backed away from him, leaving the hall Peacemaker, Tempest, and Alligator were in, completely ignoring the dragons who came down the hall to investigate. One of these dragons was Tsunami and Clay, the latter who stepped in front of Gol and guided him down the hall to Tsunami's office. "Peacemaker, Tempest, Alligator, what happened? Are you both all right?" Tempest said, her voice filled with concern that was relatively surprising to Peacemaker, glaring down the hall to Gol's retreating figure as she looked down at Alligator, who cradled his glasses sadly. "Oh, Alligator." Peacemaker looked down to see that the entire right lens of Alligator's glasses was shattered in a spiderweb-like fragments. "I'm okay," Alligator said, but his voice betrayed him as he stared at the lens. I think I can fix it." But, seeing the Mudwing's expression, it was clear to Peacemaker the glasses being broken hurt Alligator much more than Gol's shove. "Here," Tsunami said, holding out one of her talons. "I know someone who can fix them." Reluctantly, Alligator placed the glasses in the headmistress's talons. "Head off to where you were heading before," Tsunami said, sympathetically to Alligator. "I will tell your teachers you won't need to come to class." With a nod, Alligator walked ahead of Tempest and Peacemaker as he went for the study cave, his head lowered in sadness. Tsunami looked at both Tempest and Peacemaker as Alligator went out of view. "What happened?" Tsunami asked. "Neither of you are in trouble. I just need to know." "Gull is angry at me for not being born in the Sea Kingdom," Tempest revealed. "Even though most of the Sea Wings in the Academy think it's great that I'm the first Outer Kingdom citizen to be a student at Jade Mountain, Gull utterly hates me because of my status." Tempest glanced at the ground, unsure of what to say next. "He also hates how we speak harshly of your mother, Queen Coral. He put his hatred of me on the rest of my winglet." Hearing all of this, Tempest nodded in understanding. All the while, Peacemaker couldn't believe what he was hearing. Gull hated Tempest simply for where she lived? By extent, he turned this hatred towards the entire court's winglet? Now, Alligator's glasses were broken, and his feelings hurt. When news spread across the academy that Gull had started an altercation, it spread as fast as a forest fire in the hottest part of the summer. The question of who started the altercation was obvious, as Gull had a history of bad-mouthing Tempest, and his outburst inside his class did not help his case. The question of who had managed to make him retreat was a difficult answer many were not expecting. When news got out that Peacemaker, the soft-spoken, kind Nightwing-Rainwing hybrid, had stood up to Gull and somehow managed to make the Sea Wing back down, many classmates were quick to doubt this news. But when Tempest told everyone that, indeed, it had been Peacemaker, everyone would go silent and look amazed at Peacemaker. After all, many of the Sea Wing students knew Gull in the Sea Kingdom. Many knew his temper. The thought that Peacemaker could talk down the Sea Wing was a feat in and of itself. When Cliff, Ermine, Hyena, and Jaguar heard about the incident, the reactions of the rest of the winglet were filled with concern and anger. Especially from Cliff and Hyena when it came time for dinner. "Where is he?" Cliff growled as soon as the court's winglet had entered the pre-center for dinner, and the prince had stormed up to the silver winglet's eating area. "Where is Gull?" Cliff snapped at the winglet members, all of whom, including Falcon, the skywing of the winglet, nervously looked away. "I have something to say to that jerk. Where is he?" "Your Highness, we have no idea," Falcon said, visibly apologetic, likely for both not being able to answer the prince's question or his clawmate's behavior. "Well, when you see him," Cliff growled at the winglet, making no attempt to hide his frustration, "tell him he's going to pay for messing with..." "Cliff," Peacemaker said, stepping up to his clawmate and brushing his wing against the skywings. "It's fine. Let it go." Cliff turned towards him, giving Peacemaker a calm but confused stare. "That jerk tried to hurt you, Tempest, and Alligator." "I know, just let it go for now," Peacemaker urged his friend. "Just come and have dinner with us." Cliff, huffing, but nodded reluctantly to Peacemaker, slowly walked back to the court's winglet's eating area. "Peacemaker," came the voice of Mongoose, the sandwing of the winglet. Staring at her, Peacemaker saw everyone in the silver winglet give him an apologetic look. "We're so sorry about today." Peacemaker gave the winglet a sincere smile. "Don't be. You did nothing wrong," Peacemaker said as he walked back to his winglet. It was true. He did not hold the actions of Gull against the entire winglet. It wasn't their fault for Gull acting up. As he reached the winglet's table, Peacemaker saw that everyone was staring at Alligator, who looked down at his food with an empty stare. Hyena sat beside him, her tail twined with his, and her head resting against his neck. "Tsunami said she'd find someone to fix them," Hyena said, softly and sympathetically to Alligator. The Mudwing nodded, but his copper-colored eyes still stared down at his food with a sad gaze. "So she'll fix them. She promised." "I can do your work for you, Alligator," Ermine said. Her voice, while sounding neutral, was low, as if she too was saddened in her way at seeing her clawmate in such a state, especially how Tempest had almost been hurt. "You just relax." "I can still see and read without Alligator muttered. Peacemaker heard him choke for a moment. "So, why do you wear them?" Peacemaker asked, trying not to offend his clawmate. Alligator shook his head, closing his eyes tightly as he lowered his neck and head to the ground, pressing his talons against his head. Hyena placed a wing around him. "Shh," Hyena said, softly. Her gaze turned to the rest of the winglet. "Alligator can see without them, but the glasses not only help him read better, but they were also a gift from his oldest sister." "She made them for me on our second hatching day," Alligator muttered. "She always looked out for us." How Alligator said that made Peacemaker realize that Alligator's sister likely was no longer alive. The glasses were the only thing he had left of his sister. No wonder why his glasses being broken by Goal would hurt him so much. The rest of the winglet was silent after hearing this, thinking of ways to help Alligator. But Peacemaker couldn't think of anything. And he knew the rest of the winglet could not think of anything either. Instead, they let Hyena stay close to Alligator. After a few moments, Alligator looked up at Peacemaker. "Thanks, Peacemaker," Alligator said, "for standing up for me." "And I should thank you, Alligator," Tempest said before Peacemaker could speak. "Alligator, you didn't have to do anything. But you tried to stop Goal. I appreciate your help. You were brave." Hearing this from Tempest, Alligator smiled softly as he rose his head. Looking at Hyena, Alligator saw his friend give him a proud smile. Eventually, dinner was eaten, and Alligator's mood began to lift ever so slightly. Once dinner was eaten and the mess cleaned up, Peacemaker followed his winglet as they walked for their common cave. Seeing each member of his winglet, Peacemaker began to think about the moment of hesitation his mind was in when Goal was hurting Tempest and Alligator. How he wanted things to be resolved without him raising his voice or getting angry. Moon and Kinkachu always told him that he was a peacemaker, his name's sake. A peacemaker, always trying to resolve things without getting angry. But trying to be calm and peaceful around Goal didn't work. He had to raise his voice. He didn't like getting angry, but seeing his friends being harassed like that was painful. Maybe Moon would be disappointed in him. But if Peacemaker were honest, if he had to do everything all over again, the only thing he would have changed was that he would have gotten between Goal and Tempest the moment he realized what was happening. He wouldn't watch his friends get hurt like that. If Moon would be disappointed in him, so be it.